Are you too focused on what your life should look like instead of focusing on how your life actually feels? Welcome to the Search for Serotonin podcast, a podcast all about letting go of what you thought your life would look like and embracing your life for exactly what it is. Hi, I'm Carolyn, and this podcast is my audio diary where I share the struggles of being in your 20s, what going to therapy really looks like, and what it's like to live with severe high-functioning anxiety, clinical depression, and perfectionism. We all battle our own demons, but we shouldn't feel alone because of it. If you feel like you're not good enough or that you're behind in life, then let's start searching for serotonin together. Welcome to the Search Committee. Happy Monday, Serotonin Searchers. Welcome back to another episode of the Search for Serotonin podcast. This is your host, Carolyn Farrick, and today we have a big episode planned for you guys because today we're actually celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the birth of the Search for Serotonin. Yes, today, November 28th, if you're listening to the episode on the day it comes out, it is November 28th, and it is officially 1 year of me releasing this podcast. Now, I'm not at 52 episodes yet. I still think I'm around like 50 or something like that because we did take a few weeks off. There are a few weeks I didn't post. There were some weeks I did re-releases, but for the most part, this past year, every Monday, I have put out some form of new content. And to think I only missed a couple weeks is pretty exciting and pretty cool for me to reflect on because I don't know. I started this podcast a year ago. I really just did it because it felt right. I was kind of winging it. I never really had, long-term plans. I was just trying to take it each week as everything came. Like I've explained to you guys if you've been following along from this journey from the beginning. And so to sit here 1 year later and be where I'm at now, it's a lot to reflect on. It's a lot to be grateful for. It was a very, very, very difficult year for me. And I know it hasn't always been positive. I haven't always been super happy, but getting to a point right now where I can look back objectively and say, okay, this is what happened this year. This is how I changed. This is how the podcast changed. This is where I'm going moving forward, looking back on all of that and how far I've come and how far I've grown and really taken the time to look at myself and think about myself and try and better myself. It's monumental. I don't have any other word for it. It's exciting. It's eye-opening. It's humbling. And I couldn't be happier for the year that I had, even though it didn't always seem like that. So yeah, there's a lot I'm thinking about. There's a lot of stuff going through my brain. Like I said, I want to recap this year, talk about my holiday, and then get into the therapy session that I had this past week, because it really was a very nice reflection of this year and what I've been working on with me. So obviously I want to share that with all of you guys. And then I actually have something new, different, and exciting planned for Serotonin Script that I normally wouldn't do, but I feel confident in this idea and I hope you guys like it. So make sure you are sticking around until the last segment, which is Serotonin Script, to see our fun new little surprise. All right, so let's get into this recap of 1 year of the search for serotonin. So, as you all may know, I started this podcast because I suffered an ankle injury a year ago. And during that time, I decided, instead of sitting on the couch being depressed and wasting away 4 months of my life not being able to go outside, I thought I would learn how to do a podcast. I would teach myself how to edit. I'd find out how to get the right equipment. I'd figure out how to get, a website, get on Spotify, get a hosting platform, all of that kind of stuff. I did it all by myself. And I started that probably in August of 2021. So from August to November 28th, I was planning in my research phase, getting everything in order, getting on Spotify, all that fun stuff. And so then a year ago, on the 28th of November, I put out my first 2 episodes. And that was terrifying because when I put out my first episode, it was just basically a 45-minute long ramble of just me, what I've struggled with, what I've been through, what I wanted to talk about. And I really just kind of, you know, dumped it all out there. Like, here's all my ugly stuff. This is me. And this is why I'm doing this podcast. And then my second episode I released on that same day was seasonal depression and self care. And I think that episode is actually one of my top streamed episodes in the entire year, just because I really talk about, this is what I did during COVID to help fight off seasonal depression, or this is what I'm going to be doing now that I'm stuck inside and not able to walk or move. And I just provided really tangible tips of like, my soup Sunday recommendation: make soup on Sunday in the crock pot, store it for the beginning of the week. So then that way you have food and you don't have to worry about cooking when you're exhausted and it's dark and you're sad, and you don't have to worry about not eating. Or things like, how I was reconnecting with my inner child, the things that I was doing at the time, and just any advice that I could potentially provide, I was giving in that episode. So those are what I put out to start the podcast. If you've been here from the beginning, from there I went into more of informational episodes. I did a lot of personal research and provided information on anxiety, depression, OCPD. That is when I really started to dive into my OCPD. For the amount that I have talked about OCPD this year, you think I would have been studying this, looking into this, trying to learn about this for years now with how much knowledge I feel like I have now. But that did not start until I put out an episode before the end of 2021 last year. And so even in the concept of OCPD and my diagnosis with OCPD and my knowledge of OCPD, the amount that from last year when I just did initial research, finally started realizing what it meant, and then to now be here present day. And a lot of people associate OCPD with me because I talk about it very openly. I try and educate others on it. And not a lot of people out there do that. So I feel like there's a lot of people in my little Search for Serotonin community on my corner of the internet that associate the Search for Serotonin and me with OCPD. So to think how far I've come with that knowledge, the amount that I have learned about not only OCPD, but myself and how OCPD is presented within me. If you would have told me that a year ago, I probably would not have believed you. And I probably was still in denial at this point a year ago, where I was like, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not type IA. I'm so go with the flow. I'm a chill person, it's just all vibes. And to now realize that instead of fighting and running from how I actually am, I can look at myself and say, yeah, I might have this personality disorder. I might have these perfectionist tendencies, but I can make these symptoms and ways that I view things or ways that I do things not a hindrance to me, but I can make them, an asset. And so my need for organization, my need for planning, that's not always a bad thing. And so just really leaning into more of the qualities of OCPD that I always thought were negative or holding me back or that I needed to change. I feel like this past year, I really was able to come to terms with these parts of this disorder and this personality disorder and really start to embrace them rather than run for them or try and change them. And so we love to see that growth. We're all here for it. We love growing, changing, learning, and accepting things. And if you're out there with a diagnosis that maybe you're the same thing, running from it, you don't want to acknowledge it, That was me for the longest time because I didn't want to be known as somebody with a personality disorder because of what other people might think of me. But if that's you and you're struggling with a diagnosis, you're trying to run away from it, you don't want to acknowledge it, maybe try that switched up approach that I took and say, hey, let's embrace it. Let's learn as much as we can. And instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, which I did a lot this year, I felt sorry for myself. I victimized myself. I made it out to be like I was incapable, like someone needed to do everything for me. But I had to go through that learning and processing period almost to now be able to come through on the other side and say, I'm not afraid of this anymore. I'm not running from this anymore. I have this information and I now feel better equipped to maneuver forward in a way that fits me, that fits my symptoms, that fits my disorder, that fits my way of thinking and doing things and how my brain is wired. And instead of making that a negative or shameful thing, using that to step into your power and using that for your advantage and just moving forward with it. And I know right now I'm talking as if this year has been phenomenal, glitz, glam, everything perfect. And that's 1,000% not the case. If you guys have been here throughout this year, you've tuned in episode after episode after episode, you know that I stopped taking my medicine for a really big chunk of this year. And since I restarted with my therapy journey and getting on medication in August of 2020 is when I started doing it. And since August of 2020, I really was just every single day on top of medicine, going to therapy every week. And that's why I felt confident enough to start this podcast, because I finally felt stable. I felt good. I felt like the things that I were doing was helping me and that I was able to take on podcasting and openly broadcasting my mental health every single week. And this year definitely got the best of me. Comparison killed me, getting in my head, letting the voices in my head kind of win, letting myself put me down over not being far enough or good enough or whatever lies that I continue to tell myself really took over. And so there was a point where I was like, you know what? I'm not relatable enough. I'm not struggling enough for other people. My life is too good. And even though I'm dealing with very real, very trying things in my own life, I still said, even your struggles aren't good enough. You aren't good enough. But on top of that, your struggles aren't good enough to complain about or talk about or feel bad about or pain over, or just being able to take that part of struggling and grieving it and taking the time to recover. I was like, your struggles aren't real enough, quote unquote, real enough. So you need to make things harder for yourself because people don't want to hear you like dealing with these problems that aren't really problems, when in reality, that mentality is what keeps people who are struggling with their mental health in a cycle of harm, in a cycle of victimization, in a cycle of, I don't want to get help because I don't deserve it. I'm not worthy enough. And I've been in this pattern, this cycle for a lot of my life. And so pushing myself back into that, pushing myself to stop taking my meds, fall further into depression, kind of fall into that autopilot where you just disassociate and you're just going through the motions because it's just like a survival mode that you're kind of in. And I fell into that for a lot of this year. And so I feel like this year was very mentally draining. I feel like there were so many up and downs. I feel like my identity was just lost. And I think that's part of like the personality disorder, is how I struggle with my identity. I constantly get on this podcast and I say, I don't know who I am. I feel like I'm not me. That was an excuse I was kind of giving because I wanted to just continue to go through the motions. I didn't want to actually slow down and take the time and say, who am I? What do I want from this? What are my, goals, aspirations? What do I want? And so, the more I reflected on this year, the word that kept kind of coming up and coming up for me is intention. What are my intentions? And I feel like a lot of the times I lack intention. I feel like I have this fight or flight, nothing's going through my mind. It's just do, go, get the task completed, get to the other side, get to the end of the day, whatever it is, but there's no intention behind it, you know? And so that is something in my reflection of this past year that I feel like really has been lacking, the lack of intention. And I wanted to preface the word intention because it really does play a part in what we will be talking about in Therapy Think in a couple minutes. So, yeah, I felt like it was a lack of intention. I feel like I was just doing things to do things for the sake of doing them, and it wasn't because maybe it felt good to me or it felt right to me. It just was, "Oh, okay, this is what I should be doing or what I have to be doing." Again, the same mentality that I started this podcast to break away from. It wasn't supposed to be, "Well, this is what I should be doing," or "This is what society tells me I need to be doing." I started this podcast to break away from that, to find out what I need to be doing, what makes me happy, and hopefully along the way help you all take more of that mindset of, well, it's not about what everything outside is saying or what I should be doing or what people on social media are doing. It's about what internally for me as an individual or for you as an individual, what you want to be doing and how you can find your own version of happiness. And so really reminding myself of that intention of, this is why I started the podcast. The intention was to find happiness, find my happiness, find a life that looked good, felt good, and supported me. And it's not a linear journey. It's never going to be a linear journey. It's never going to go just keep going up. Everything goes well. It's going to be ebbs, flows, ups, downs, all of that jazz. And I continue to say I would not trade this year for anything because I needed to go through the ups and the downs, the hard stuff, the negative self talk, the self doubt, all of that to sit here 1 year later and say that I had to go through that and learn through that. So then now I can take this second year and really set that intention again and focus on that intention and actually do it the way that I want to do it. It's time for Therapy Think, a segment all about destigmatizing mental health through therapy. During this segment, I will give you a sneak peek inside of my weekly therapy sessions and share what I took away from therapy this week. Alrighty, so this week in Therapy Think, I had, like I said, a very eye-opening therapy session. And it really did perfectly sum up this past year and what I've been working on and what I've been doing. And I started this therapy session out by kind of describing how I've been feeling a lack of purpose lately. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't know where I was supposed to be going. And I really just kind of felt lost. And I was in this like self pity party victimization period where I was kind of looking back at the year and I was like, well, I didn't accomplish anything I wanted to. I'm not where I want to be. I haven't grown. I still can't manage my emotions. Just a shitstorm of negativity. And I was kind of trying to articulate it to Tina in a way that was making sense. And I was really trying to do a lot of reflection before this therapy session to figure out why I was feeling a lack of purpose and a lack of passion, and why I was so focused on feeling stressed and angry and sad and emotional all the time, which isn't a bad thing. It's just, it was a lot of emotion and negativity and anger that I hadn't felt in that way in a really long time. And so I was kind of explaining to Tina as I was recapping this year that I've been through, I started this journey out, whether I knew it or not, by healing my inner child. And I started healing my inner child by starting to do things that my inner child used to love. So, like I said, when I broke my ankle and I was stuck in the house for 4 months, instead of becoming depressed, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast, but I'm also going to break out coloring books again. And I'm also going to, really focus on doing my makeup more because I like that and that is fun to me. And I'm going to focus more on, putting on cute outfits and things like that. Or I'm going to start getting into painting again, which I've done so much of this year. And I really love that kind of stuff because when I was a kid, I used to love playing dress up. I used to love play makeup. I used to love coloring, painting, arts and crafts, doing fun little projects. And that's when I felt my most connected to myself, was when I was doing these things that made me feel good. And so reminding myself that even though I did these things as a child, now that I'm an adult, that doesn't mean I can't not do them anymore. I still have the ability to do those things. And so I started doing those things and started taking that approach of, well, what did I like to do when I was like in middle school, when I was a kid? What did I do? And try and focus on doing that kind of stuff. And so I feel like that really kicked off the healing of my inner child. And I worked on my inner child for a really long time. And it wasn't until this past summer that I want to say I kind of closed the chapter on healing my inner child. So, if you guys remember on one of the episodes I released over the summer, I kind of briefly hinted to a dream that I had where I had a very vivid dream and it was from a specific place and time in my childhood, specific people that are no longer in my life that had a lot to do with a lot of the hurt that surrounded my childhood. And in this dream, I was back in that time, in that place, and it was me as an adult in that dream, navigating those old spaces, navigating those old people. And at the end of the dream, I went in to the place that I was at, and there I was sitting there as a child, and I like picked myself up and I took myself out with me, and that's when the dream ended. And I talked to Tina about that in therapy, and I talked to you guys about it briefly on the podcast. But I was telling Tina this week that that's the definitive point that I really feel like that was me going in and pulling my inner child out of the pain, the negativity, the trauma that I had dealt with, and pulled them back into me and where I am now. And that really closed the chapter on the broken relationship with me and my inner child. And something I didn't realize when I closed that chapter is, yes, that chapter was closed. My inner child was healed. Yay, woo, celebration. But that opened the door for my unhealed teenager to come out. And you see people talk about it online. You say, once you heal your inner teen, your teenager's coming out and she's fucking pissed. She was so fucking pissed. She's so pissed and hurt and sad and angry. And I think my inner teen is more damaged than my inner child, because my inner teen was when I really started to struggle with my mental health, when I really started to internalize things. I stopped talking to people, I stopped letting people in, and I was really told what to do a lot of my teenage years. I didn't have the freedom to explore what I wanted to explore, do what I wanted to do. I basically felt like my teenage years were just maneuvered for me. I didn't really get a say. I really didn't get to feel things or express myself or have time for passions or fun or anything like that. I felt like I was just had so much demanded of me, so much expected of me. I was a full-time traveling athlete, and that consumed 5, if not more, days of my week. So I would go to school, I'd go to practice, I'd go to games, and I spent a lot of time on the road. I didn't have time to take a photography class because I thought it was fun, or, go hang out with my friends and try new things or do what other normal teenagers were doing. And so I feel like she was really upset with me. And so I told Tina, I really think I did unlock her at the end of summer. And with that happening, I also unlocked a lot of sadness and anger and irrationality and just like very pessimistic mindset. And that's why I feel like since summer, things have been so hard and so dark and so life or death, end of the world, like everything so much is because that's how I felt when I was a teenager. One little thing would go wrong and it was like the end of the world because I didn't have control or I didn't feel safe or I didn't feel heard or I didn't feel like I could do a lot of things. You know, I felt like I was in this little trapped box and I was just trying to get out, but no one could hear me. And so I told Tina that I feel like I've been trying to let my inner teen out, but it's been presenting in a way that it's anger and sadness. And I couldn't really show my emotions when I was a teenager. So now I'm like, hey, I can show these emotions and I can feel these things, but it's expressing itself in anger and lashing out and, disrespect almost for a lot of people. And it's not cute and it's not fun and I'm not proud of it, but I thought the way to healing my inner teen was letting her feel these things that she never got to express as a kid. And Tina said, "Well, why are you taking that approach? Like why are we going about it from like let her be a rampant bitch to everybody because she couldn't blatantly do that when she was a teenager?" And she was like, "Why not take the approach you did with your inner child and focus on positive things?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of where I've been at, where I've been mulling over is should I be doing the things that I wanted to as a teenager that I never got the chance to do?" Like when I got to college, I realized that a lot of people had a lot of times for hobbies and passions in high school that they just did for fun. And then they were now taking that in college and either making a career out of it or furthering that. And so without me having that foundation of something that I really felt passionate about, I felt like it was too late for me to start. It felt like I was behind. It felt like there was like no time for me to start doing something just because I loved it. It was a time where I was like, okay, well, this is setting you up to work for the rest of your life. You need to make a career out of it. You need to make a job out of it. And you need to be the best person doing it. And so I was thinking about that. I was like, what would I have loved to do in college when I had the time, the ability, and the freedom to, if I didn't tell myself, oh, it's too late for you to start this? What would I have been doing? And things that came up were photography. I used to love photography. I got really into it when I was in high school at the ancient birth ages of Instagram when everything had like 25 filters and terrible edits. I really loved taking random pictures. And I never really got into that. And yes, recently I bought a camera, but I feel like I haven't like honored how I want to use a camera and take pictures and the things I want to do with that. So I'm like, oh, maybe I can start getting into photography more. And then it kind of turned into, well, something I also was really good at in high school was writing. I really excelled in writing. I always did well in English class. I took college level writing courses when I was in high school, and I always did so well. And I really liked writing, but I always told myself that I wasn't good enough because I wasn't like to the level of everyone else. And so in college, it got to a point where in my senior year, like I literally told everybody, I was like, I'm the worst writer. I can't write. I can't do it. My papers are shit. Everything's bad. When that wasn't the case. And so I told Tina, I was like, I want to write more. I think I have all these ideas in my head, and sometimes I don't know how to put them together for the podcast. I don't know how to do it. I don't know. And so I've decided that I'm going to focus more on writing. And the concept that I really want to write and focus my writing on for myself is surrounding the sexual assault. And I've been talking about this a lot lately, you guys. I know some of you might be tired of hearing about it, But there's a lot that I need to process. There's a lot that I have to say, that a lot I still feel very strongly about. And I need to unload this weight that I've been carrying around so I can process it, get through it, and come to terms with it. So then I can come out on the other side stronger and more whole as a person. And what I told Tina that I wanted to do is I wanted to write poetry. I've always loved reading poetry books. I used to read a lot of poetry books, oddly enough, that centered around sexual abuse and sexual assault and women overcoming their stories and using that pain and turning it into purpose and writing something beautiful and telling their story in a way that worked for them. I also really like poetry because, yes, there are rules, but there's also so much freedom and creativity that you can do. So I said, why not take writing? Why not take creativity? And why not use it to finally walk through these feelings? And so I've had this idea and this concept to write this book. I have like 3 sections of the book planned out with about 30 poem topics ready to go. And I have a clear, definitive goal of what I want to say, what I want to get across, what I want to get out, what I want to share. And I have this all laid out, but I haven't been writing it. And Tina was kind of digging and saying, well, why? Why are we not writing it? Why are we not writing the book? Why are we not processing the feelings? Why are we not moving forward? And I really was, for the first time ever, able to articulate it. I was like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to heal. And I'm afraid that this book will actually help me. And I'm afraid that it'll all get better. And I know it sounds really weird to think of it that way, but I'm afraid because I feel like not only the sexual assault trauma and hurt and stuff that I carry around is a part of me now because I've been having it with me for 4 years, but I'm afraid that if I can clear up this and my inner child is healed and my inner teen is healed and then this thing is healed, then what's left? For 25 years of my life, I've had trauma and sadness and hurt and the inability to navigate my emotions. But if I heal it all and it all helps and it all goes away, then who am I? What do I have left? Who am I as a person? What can I pull from? Will I lose my creative ability? Because I feel like a lot of my creative ability comes from my pain, and I turn that into something that other people can relate to and can feel seen by. And so I said, what if I lose that? What if I can't do that anymore? And I told Tina, I was like, I know this is irrational because if I heal and I do this, I'll only become better. And then I can help people even more. And I can continue to speak out and share my story and use my voice. And I just told her, it comes down to the fear. It comes down to the fear, and the fear takes over because then if I get that fear going, then I let the perfectionism creep in and add on more fear and shame. And it's like, well, it's not going to be perfect. So why even bother? Because no one's going to care. And you're going to open up all these wounds and re-traumatize yourself and hurt yourself all over again just for nobody to give a shit. And so that's when Tina comes in and she said the word intention. She said, I have to focus on my intentions when I'm doing things. And I can't let the fear, the shame, or the, what ifs stop me. I can't say, well, I'm never going to write this book and I'm never going to process these feelings and I'm never going to do what I want to and find my happiness because other people might not see it the same way I do. My intention obviously is to heal myself, share my story, and in the hopes that it does benefit someone out there. But my intention is not to write this book, get so much approval, and focus on everybody's opinion of it. This book is for me. This book is my love letter to myself, my final gift of closing the chapter on everything before I turned 25, my childhood, essentially, all of the bad stuff. And if I can do this in a way where I write this book, I can kind of, say, this is my last gift to myself of who I was. Now let's move forward with it. Let's keep going. Let's stop looking so much at the past and stop holding on to the past and stop letting the past dictate everything. Let's close it, acknowledge it, and grow from it. And I just hope you guys uh stick around long enough to see this book get written. I would love to put it out before April when I turn 26 because I think that would be a kick-ass birthday present to myself to self-write and self-publish a book by the time that I'm 26 years old. Um, but I also I want to take my time with it. I want to use this as a project to process these feelings, really work at what it is I'm trying to accomplish. And I want to have an overall larger message and theme for the book that does go a lot further than just myself. So, yeah, that is a little sneak peek behind the scenes. Our final segment of the week is Serotonin Script. This segment is all about filling your weekly prescription of serotonin. I will share what sparked serotonin in my life this week to hopefully inspire you to find your own version of happiness. If you want to share how you searched for your weekly dose of serotonin, then DM at the Search for Serotonin on Instagram to be featured on next week's segment of Serotonin Script. Alrighty. This week for Serotonin Script, like I said, we are switching it up. We're doing something a little different. I wanted to incorporate something new that I have been spending some time doing on the podcast, really share it with you guys because I've been working on it behind the scenes. And I said I was going to bring it into the podcast, but I have yet to do so. So, cryptically, what I'm talking about is tarot card readings. A couple months ago, I bought a deck of tarot cards and I have been just trying to get familiar with them, pull them out as much as I can, pull different cards, try and learn about the cards and the meanings. And I feel like I have enough of a handle on it that I want to start sharing it with all of you guys. So, what is going on in this month of December? What can we expect? What can we anticipate to happen? And so, what I like to do is I like to just get a shuffle going and just really mix them up, not focus on looking at the cards, putting too much pressure on it. And then normally I like to let a couple cards fall out. Today I'm going to try and aim for about 3 just so we can get kind of an idea of what themes we can be expecting for this month of December and what energy will be coming our way for the rest of 2022 and how we can expect to kind of enter 2023. So just give me a second while I shuffle, and when I have 3 cards out, I will let you guys know and we can get a reading. We have 3 cards, and the first card that came out was the 10 of Pentacles. It really flew right out there. And then we had the 9 of Wands come out, and then the last card that came out was the 3 of Pentacles. So I just want to remind people that I am new to tarot. I'm not an expert. I am trying to learn as I go. I have my little handy dandy book, and something nice that I really enjoy about tarot is there are meanings to the cards, but you can interpret those meanings in a variety of ways. A lot of the people also say to use your specific cards to, see what you're feeling when you look at the cards and incorporating that into the message. And something I really love about my deck, it is very colorful, very bright, a lot to look at, a lot going on. Like if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you see this 9 of Wands card is the pumpkin head, and there's like fire around the pumpkin guy. There's a deep purple sky, bats, like all this stuff going on in here. So a lot to reference. So let me get an idea of what these 3 cards mean and how they put together, and I'll give you this little recap here. Okay, so the 10 of Pentacles indicates that you feel compelled to share your success with others to make sure they are cared for as well. It's signifying that you have a solid foundation and you worked really hard to get to where you're at. And it also represents security and happiness in all areas of your life. It deals with permanence and again, satisfaction, security and happiness in your life. And again, it shows that everything you've put your efforts into for a long time will almost work out. Another source is saying that the 10 of Pentacles can also paint a picture of how wonderful life can be for you. And so, according to this card, I'm not really getting those vibes from this card because it's like this giant bull and he's like beating his chest. But I guess that does kind of like play into the you want to share it, you want to say, here I am, here's all that I've done. Look at all these cool accomplishments, and I've worked my ass off for this essentially. So that's what we're getting from the 10 of Pentacles. The 9 of Wands, which again is the pumpkin head for those of you watching on YouTube. I should give you a little show. The 9 of Wands means interruption, difficulties and oppositions too hard to overcome, giving up one's projects to avoid conflict and starting anew after a challenging period. See, to me, that seems a little conflicting with the 10 of Pentacles. Because maybe you've worked so hard to get somewhere and you're trying to show off, but you get stopped, you get stuck, you get thrown these difficulties, and it's just telling you maybe you need to give up. Maybe things are too hard, maybe you gotta just quit. So let's see what the Three of Pentacles say and see if it ties in together what this reading is giving, because right now I'm a little confused. And that's the fun part about learning tarot is I don't always have the answers and sometimes the cards aren't clear, but that's what we get. Okay, so 3 of Pentacles is mastery of a skill or trade in work and achieving perfection. Oh, artistic ability and dignity through ranking or powers. The Three of Pentacles suggests that you are pooling your experience and skills together with a large group to accomplish shared goals. Oh, okay. It represents learning, studying, and apprenticeship. So, this is saying for the rest of the year, you may feel like with this 10 of Pentacles that, you have worked hard. You're ready to show off. You're ready to be like, look at me, look at how great I am, look at how much I can help other people. And basically, like, I've made it, I feel like. But then the 9 of Wands comes in with those difficulties. Maybe it tells you, hey, you need to quit. You need to stop. You just need to give up. This is too hard. But then the 3 of Pentacles is saying you're going to find your people, the people who you work with, the people who are going to show you the ropes, the people who are going to teach you that, hey, yes, you can achieve what you thought you were ready to achieve. You just need this guidance to get through these difficulties, and you're going to get where you want to go. You just need to ask for help. Cool. So I like that energy going into the end of 2022 is even as difficulties arise, remember to ask for help. Find people who are already going through it, who know the ropes, who have been there, done that, and just keep trying to get mentored, keep trying to work towards your goals, and don't let the fear of hardships popping up stop you, because there are people out there who want to help you, who want to show you, and who want to get you to that perfect place that you want to be. Awesome. That was a cool little reading. If you guys like when I do these tarot card pulls, I know this is the first one, but if you want to see more of this, if you want me to do more like weekly card pulls or anything like that, let me know. And you can DM me on Instagram at the Search for Serotonin. Or if you guys want to comment on the YouTube videos, let me know what you want to see more of. I'm always down for that. Or you could also rate and review the episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment as to what more you would like to see. All right. So that is it for this week's episode. It was a little bit of a long one, but like I said, we have a full year to recap, and this is my last solo episode until 2023. So I just wanted to check in and share all of this insight with you guys out there. All right. Thank you so much for being here for not only another week of the Search for Serotonin podcast, but an entire 1 year. Thank you. Thank you. If you are listening to this, thank you, because it would not be possible without all of you. I do this to help people out there. I do this because of the community that I've built out there, and none of it would be possible without you guys. So I just want to say I'm so grateful for all of you. You mean the world to me, and thank you for opening up to me throughout this year, sharing your stories with me. I love hearing from you guys. I love how we can all relate in some way, shape, or form. And thank you not only for showing up for me, but showing up for you, because the more you try and learn about your own mental health and the more you talk about it, the more you acknowledge it, the more you can benefit from it. So, thank you, all of you beautiful humans out there. It was a crazy year. I would not change it for the world. And I can't wait to see where this next year takes all of us. Alrighty, have a wonderful Monday, and I will see you guys back here next week. Always remember, this world is better with you in it.